By wisdom a house is built, by understanding it is established, and by knowledge the rooms are filled with all pleasant and precious riches. Proverbs 24, verses 3 and 4. Hello, ladies. Welcome to Homemakers Radio. I hope you get a lot done while you listen, and I hope that I won't get in your way or irritate you in any way. You're welcome to go back to some of my older posts and also listen to this on my website rather than here on YouTube, because you will find a lot more on the post, and you can leave a comment there. You can't leave a comment here on the video channel. And so I'd like you to go over there and participate. And I usually use 3 sections of this. Try to talk an hour so you can get something done. I originally started it to help you clean a bedroom. And if you would like to know more about homemaking, if you're new at it and you find yourself going around in circles wondering where to start, you might go to the Fly Lady's site. She has taken the Sidetracked Home Executives course that was way back in the 1970s and turned it into Fly Lady, and does a wonderful job. And you can go and see how to create a schedule and go onto her website and learn what day it is and what zone. She has her house divided into zones that you do your daily work and then work on one particular zone per week, and go and read that and get yourself in a schedule and get yourself going if that's what you think you want. I'm not really ready to start Fly Lady because I've got a couple of areas that I want to get to where I can function better in them, and then I'll go on Fly Lady, and because I really need to concentrate on getting the books in order and a storage room that I'm working on. But I do try to do my daily work, and the daily work is just your dishes and your laundry, but we start with what? Preparation. And today, before you go and do your work, there's nothing to see here actually, but I will be maybe reviewing a book or talking about something in a book. I want you to see my teacup today, and it's from Home Goods. I've already shown this, but it went with the dress, so I thought it worked pretty well. And I like these. It's Stitch Call Gracie Bone China by Coastline Imports, and very beautiful. I'm really interested in going to Home Goods again and looking at what their teacups are. I really like the new teacups better than the antiques. I started out with antiques, but and it doesn't take long for something to be an antique. I had a Prairie Rose set of 2 teacups and a teapot and a sugar and a creamer from the Prairie in Canada, in Alberta, when I lived there. And my mother was Canadian, and so I bought that set, and now it's been, almost 50 years, and so I guess that's an antique. But I started out with finding things at garage sales. But when Home Goods started making these, I prefer the new ones. For one thing, the handles are bigger and sturdier, and they just are easier to clean. Now, as far as cleaning goes, if I could just find the little cleaning thing. Okay, somebody asked me about cleaning a teacup. So when I get finished with this, I will let you go and you can go get something done, clean a room, or if you've got something to load or unload or fold or sort or maybe some paperwork, then you can go do that while I talk. And so today I wanted to show you something about this teacup. And you see this? This is a little brush, and you get it in the laundry section at Walmart. I'm talking about where the laundry detergents are. It's hanging there probably just on a little hook outside beside something like the rubber gloves are, or just randomly hung somewhere. And it's a real small brush, and you can also clean your teapot spout with it. I don't use teapots as much as I used to because they're so hard to get clean. I don't think they're very, I just would rather, just for myself, use a tea bag, and I'll use it all day, the same tea bag maybe, but I'll start over the next day. Okay, what this is for is there are little sections inside of here, inside of this teacup, that you can't get to, and what you do is you put it in water, and then you wrap a soda bicarb around it. Just stick it in soda bicarb and wrap it, and then you can get the tea stains off of these little areas. You've got to not forget about these little areas. And that's one reason why I have begun to buy cups that are very uh, less intricate, have just a plain handle and not a little section here and a section there, and that are not on pedestal. And that way I don't have to clean so much. But I thought you might enjoy knowing about that. And I'm going to put that aside. And now I would like to talk to you first of all about, I have it in 3 sections here. And the first is preparation, and the second is the actual homemaking, housekeeping, and then the third will be getting along with other members of the family or dealing with people. And we have a little fun with that sometimes, but today we'll seriously talk about the home and the family and how to get along with that. And I also would like to talk about getting prepared means, I have a little note here I want to find, and that is, don't, when you get dressed, like I'm dressed in the dress that I'm going to wear all day, and if I need to go somewhere, I'll put a blazer over it so that it doesn't look like a house dress. I'll wear something that I'm going to wear all day long. I'm not going to change before I go out. Now, I told you about house dresses in the olden days where they would wear them and they'd get their housework all done, and they'd have to go somewhere and they would change. But we don't do that, and it's not necessary to do that. I get dressed in the clothes that I'm going, if I have to be called out, or I have to go out, or I have to walk across over to the church building or to the neighbors and someone's going to see me, I'm going to look okay in it. And so I'm not going to hang around in a dress that is inferior. And I am going to put a little cardigan or a jacket over this if I have to go out. So that's what I would suggest you do. And I did say I would include patterns that don't have zippers in them and don't have set-in sleeves to make it a little bit easier for you. And I will try to do that maybe in a future post. Maybe I'll do it in this one. I don't know. So one thing I wanted to say about your appearance is, because of the way the world looks at homemaking, you want to start creating a new reputation for yourself and for the wonderful opportunity of homemaking by dressing well for it, to show that it has dignity and that you mean business. And one thing I think is important is that you don't participate in the demise of homemaking reputation by not looking good, by just treating it as though you're bored and you look bad and you look all dried out and you look messy and you look like, I used to say, something the cat dragged in. um, just look alive and look healthy and look like you're prepared. It's so important. So don't participate in the demise of the homemaker's reputation by not being prepared and not looking good. So fix your hair, fix your face. And I've been asked several times, what about hair and makeup and that sort of thing, and I'd like to go into it sometime, but generally for the young people, I would say start out young, always paying attention to your appearance every day, your clothing, your hair, your face, and just know how to do it so that when you're older and you start aging a little and you know you're going to have to take care of yourself better, it's not a problem because you're used to it. You're in a routine. And I take care of myself the same way I did when I was 16 years old, and with very slight variations. And so, I was taught at a very early age how to, skin care, hair care, clothing, what makes you look thin, and what makes you look good, and what, you don't want to wear, people think that we're obsessed with it, the appearance. But let me tell you something. You need to be somewhat careful about what you wear, because it can be a distraction to people if you don't look good. They'll look at you like, where, what kind of work does she do? And of course, some people just don't care. But that is, to my opinion, is a very rebellious attitude. And if you want to do well, this is your starting point: looking good, creating the best look for yourself. And you can, I have had books where I have read to you things about color, things about style, and things about dressing thin, and also looking like you're ready to start. And it is a starting point for you. It's like you have turned your headlights on the car. And if you can please do that, there's a start for you. And I don't care if it's 11 o'clock in the morning or 12. Just go ahead, get your shower, start over, and you're going to feel better. I used to do this to my children if they were a little bit tense or worried or something. I'd say, why don't you go get a bath, and then we'll change your clothes and redo your hair, boys or girls. And they would do that and come out with a better mood. Also, I had on my wall, on the doors of their rooms, was a verse or a saying to memorize before they came out. They had to, I encouraged them to clean up their rooms, to look good, to use the bathroom and everything before they all came out and started getting breakfast. And so that home became, it became more of a beautiful place to stay. We just always pretended it was kind of temporary, and we were visiting a very exclusive place. So we would get dressed before we came to breakfast or dinner, and we enjoyed that so much. So the other thing is, when there are several things in getting prepared, that's your first thing that you do when you have a home and when you are the homemaker and you're the lady in charge, is to get prepared. Now, if you look at someone who's in charge of something, a manager, a general, they don't go around looking like they have no confidence. They don't go around dressing lower than the people that they are in charge of. They show the example. They set the pace. They set the tone, and that's what you're doing. And I would say dress in things that you love. If you love the colors, if the pattern and the print inspires you. Now today I'm wearing a print that I got several years ago at Walmart, and it has a bit of a glitter or glisten that's woven into it, which I really like. And it was at the same time quite promoted in some of the fashion catalogs. And I was surprised to see it at Walmart, which I could make it for just dollars. And I've had it for many years. And the thing is, if the print attracts you and the color attracts you, then you should wear it. If it makes you smile, if it makes you happy when you wear it. And I think that that adds to your demeanor. And as a homemaker, you're going to set the tone from for the home. And as the saying goes, her presence lights the home. Now today I'm in a very small room, and I'm trying to keep quiet, because there are other people here, and I didn't want to go to the well-lit room where everyone could be woken up. So today I'm in a small room that I'm in a dilemma as to what to do with it. But some people have come to visit me have said they come into this room. I've turned it into a little tiny bedroom, and the bed, it barely fits. And some people have said that they had a room this small. It's about as wide as a man would be tall if he were 6 feet. And they said if they had a room like this, they wouldn't have known what to do with it. And I still don't know what to do with it. So I might make a house tour sometime on video, and this room will be changed over. And today I'm trying to speak to you long enough for you to get something done. So if you've got something to do, I hope you will go and get it. I do hope to read to you a little bit today, and I hope it's edifying, and talk to you a little bit about some things to do with the intellect and with stimulating your mind. But homemaking can be very stimulating if you are not just putting your mind to the work, but thinking about something very important and how this will apply to you spiritually and emotionally and mentally and physically, everything that you do. For example, one of the routines of the morning in Fly Lady and some of these other homemaker support sites will say that the first thing you need to do is fill up your sink with soapy water, and get ready to put dishes in it. Now, many of us have dishwashers, which I'm extremely grateful for. I like especially the fact that they get everything so sanitary. It's just so squeaky clean. There's not a streak on it. And I prefer the dishwasher. However, there will be some things that you won't be putting in the dishwasher, which are things like this. This says dishwasher safe on it, but I don't always do it because eventually a dishwasher will wear off the print of something this fine. So there are two things about the home that are the same as your own preparation and your own getting dressed and your own appearance first is, first of all, the home has an appearance, and you have to prepare the home too, so that it will work for you. So remember that people will get a bad attitude about full-time homemaking if your home does not show the example. As much as you can, keep the entrance of the home, whether it's the outside entrance or the inside entrance, keep that as immaculate as you can, because that will be first impression. And it's possible that people that come in will not go further into the house, and if they're not part of the family. But even for the family, it gives them a feeling of dignity if the home is prepared and cared for better than any business. Now, here in the U.S., you cannot have a business unless you keep the front area clean. You can't have trash by the front door. Everything there's a standard that they have to have, and you cannot run a business unless the entryway is clear and there's no hazards in the way. You can't have stuff all over the floor that people would get hurt on. And you have to apply some of these same business principles to the home. And that it is so incredibly important for the formation of memories and the formation of impressions and the formation of well-being, sense of well-being, to have the home have a good appearance, the mother and the homemaker have a good appearance, and the home has a good appearance, and you prepare your home first thing to serve the people that are going to be in it. So you have to start out with three things, and that's the preparation and your attitude, and also with prayer. Preparation being your appearance, and the same would apply to the home. But also, when it comes to homemaking, to prepare it in a way that shows that you care about what you have to look at all day. You know, Mr. S told me when we first got married, well, you just do what you want with the house. You know, if you want to paint it, whatever you want to paint it, I'll paint it, just because you're going to be here more than I am. And so I want you to be content and happy, inspired by it. So I think that's what you should do. It's a good principle, and to make it a place that people like to be in. So the thing is, if it's not going to, if there's something about it that irritates you, I think you should fix it. And that's one thing about people who like to fix things or who want to succeed in life, is they will find something that has a problem with it and they'll fix it. I'm talking about materially. You know, if there's something, like I'm sitting in this room today thinking about the homemaking that I have to do and looking at how this would better serve me. Would it be better if I moved this little end table over here so I could reach it? Would it be better to have the lamp somewhere else? I'll be thinking about those things even while I'm making a bed. And so you have to keep your mind engaged, thinking about things while you work. And so homemaking is also very intricately connected to housework. Housework can't be just housework by itself. It is homemaking. Housework is homemaking, but homemaking isn't always housework. So what you have to do is rid your mind of the idea that housework is just a grueling labor and that it's no fun, because when you have read Emily Barnes' book called The Spirit of Loveliness, she shows how every area of cleaning can be made a delight. For example, and I have recited this before, she would clean her refrigerator, which to me is one of those grueling jobs, and then she would add a little vase of wildflowers from outside in, just stick it in there somewhere so that when she opened the door it would greet her, and it was just a lovely thing. You know, who would have thought of decorating the inside of your refrigerator to be a delight when you open it? But she would do the same thing for washing dishes. When she was finished, she would turn on a little candle, light a candle, or just make it look nice. And so every little area can be enjoyable, and it's not just hard work. We're not in. Some people run the home like they were in the military, and that everything has to be absolutely perfect, but there's no feeling of hominess and family in it, because it's just all correct, but no values put into it. So that's a hard one, but I think we can all do that and get through the day a lot better if our homes are things that we are arranged and supplied with furnishings and things that we like. Now, homemaking is also a time when you can think, and I know when I'm washing the teacups or just thinking, I'll be thinking about, okay, when I get finished with this, I've got to go clean off that table or do the floor or something like that. I'm thinking about this all the time and keeping my mind. I don't just get into a blank. You don't just go into a blank, and you don't just kind of check out mentally when you're doing something. You've got to think about what the next step is while you're doing. It's like reading. You teach your students to not just read the first word, but kind of while you are saying that first word, you're looking down the sentence to see what's coming next. And so this is what you're thinking when you're doing something in the kitchen. And our kitchens usually come first because they have to be kept sanitary and also available so that we can prepare food, prepare meals. And I wanted to just look over my notes here a little bit and see if there's anything that I left out on that particular thing. Now, if your home is not ideal and it's not exactly like you like it, like I think many of us who live in the older houses, you know, there's always something that we'd like to fix or that just isn't quite to our liking. And if I had to do it over the ideal way, I'd have a house built for me that was just the way I wanted it in the first place. But that doesn't always happen. So what I would say is try to fix it as best you can and apply your knowledge of beauty and your knowledge of peace to your home when you're trying to clean it up or fix it. Remember Molly in Wives and Daughters. Her father said, will you try? And she said, I'll try. So you can try. You see something that looks formidable in your home and the housekeeping just seems to be overwhelming, just say, I'll try. So to fix things the best you can. Now I want to go on to talking a little bit about books and education, and I'm just educating you. You don't have to feel that you have to do it at home, but I have a couple of books I'd like to show you or read to you about. And this one is called So No More Home Decor. It kind of matches my dress. And it was the next library book, and so someone's broken the binding on the front. That's terrible, isn't it? And you notice it said withdrawn because it was broken. But what it is let me just tell you what it is. It's different styles of decorating without sewing. And I so enjoyed this because I have a knowledge of sewing, so it actually helped me with this, and a lot of it is done without sewing. It's draping and it's gluing and it's attaching embellishments. So they have a section called Classic Elegance. Then they have Country West, and they have Romantic, and they have French Country, Rosy Haven, American Country, Casual Mix, and Sporty Retreat. And the two that I liked the best were the Romantic one was very interesting to me because I had all these things that I didn't know what to do with. It came from my grandmother and my husband's mother, and they showed you how to make pillows out of old doilies and handkerchiefs. I really enjoyed that. And then they showed you how to make a curtain with the bishop looking, and it's just done with rubber bands. You just put rubber band around a section of a long curtain and poof it out. And you don't have to sew. You don't really even have to have, I think this was written before hot glue, because you don't even have to always use glue. And then they have the French Charm, which is really nice. It shows you how to make curtains, and it'll be a whole thing, like a whole kitchen set with a placemats, a tea cozy, and chair covers and things that all match. And then also I liked this one here, and it was called Rosy Haven, where everything was done with rose fabric. I really liked that one, and I tried one of these, how to make a covered round box like the old-fashioned hat box, and a tissue box. Now I know today ladies don't have a lot of time for this, but here's a shower curtain that's no-sew, and I suppose it has a plastic liner behind it, but it just embellishes the house a little bit. And I know most people don't have time for this, but it's always nice to have the knowledge of it. And then they had this section here that I really liked. I don't know why, it's because it's such a contrast, and it was called Sporty Retreat. And I like the idea of having one room that looks more, I don't know, like a hunter or something like that, hunting and fishing. And I just like the idea of doing something with a room like that. It's such a nice contrast. And then I also want to talk to you a little bit about, oh, I got another book from Thrift Books. And this will probably be the last one, because I think I've got enough to fill a bookshelf now. And this is one of those 9 historical women books, and it has the decal edges, which I really like, and the parchment paper. And I have not read but one story in it, and the stories are short because there are 9 of them, and you could actually sit down and read it and finish it. And when you just want to kind of let your mind go, and you don't watch, if you don't watch movies or TV or anything like that, and you just want something just to relax you, these are nice. And I know a lot of people object to romance novels, but these are Christian romances, and they're not much romance. And I have to tell you, they're not much. It's mostly about women who have a difficulty and how they got out of it, and there's a lot of goodness in them. But this one was called Blue Ribbon Brides, and you know how I like end papers. I have to show you the end paper to this one. Who can resist a pie? So I had something some observation that I wanted to say about this, but I was once lectured quite harshly by someone who thought that I should not have these. But when you think of the literature that we have been subjected to over the years, I mean, years ago, in the olden days, you could pick up a book and read it, and it would not lead you anywhere depressing or anything. It always ended pretty well and was an adventure or something like that. And then they actually infiltrated this industry with some of the worst horrible horror stories and immoral things in these books, and it's just like you have your senses assaulted. And now and it was the publishers were limited, and they were taken over by some of these people who really wanted to demean people, wanted to demean civilization and bring our thoughts down to cruel and low things. And then now we have publishing for everybody. Everybody can publish. You can publish. I can publish. This blog and this video is publishing. This is why they scream so loud when the Christian ladies get going on blogs and videos, and they want to take them down, because we have a little bit of publishing going on, whereas before it was totally controlled by just a few publishing companies. So I like this. This is from Barbour Books, Barbour. I like to order them from Thrift Books. They're usually in pretty good shape, and Barbour Books, you have to be careful when you go to the original place if you want something like this. This is about women who went to the county fair between 1889 and 1930 for the blue ribbon, for something they had that they thought was valuable, and usually from stitching, quilts, to butter sculpting. I don't know if you've ever seen butter sculpting, but they used to sculpt butter, and baking pies and different things like that. And there were 9 stories of these women that entered. And if you've ever entered anything in a county fair, you'll understand just the story about it. These stories do not get your heart racing or anything like that, but they're good and clean. So if you have children, I mean, I would say you could probably let your 12-year-old, 13-year-old daughter read something like this, and you wouldn't have to worry, but I'd say read it first, and because it's always good to guide people, young people that you're in charge of, and tell them what to look for. And the thing is, when our children were younger and they were wanting something to read, there wasn't anything there except Jane Austen, and that was a little bit, and even Anne of Green Gables, if you were going to read it, was very difficult. And Jane Austen was a little bit more difficult for a 12-year-old. So, but that's what we had, and I think that you could probably safely let someone read these. And so I also wanted to show you something about the science book for Christian schools, and those of you who have homeschooled science. Now, one of the things that we were accused of when we started homeschooling was that we didn't believe in science because they knew we believed in creation. Oops, I'm sorry. I'm in one of these tables where I can't cross my knees because I'll bump it. But what these books did, and these were Abeka. I think this isn't Abeka, this is some other, but I wanted to read it to you anyway. I preferred the Abeka because it had such beautiful covers, and they gave the child dignity, and they also introduced the book by talking about how much God cared for them and why science was necessary. But one of the things they accused us of, I mean, even people that would be invited to our home from church would say, well, you know, of course, the Christian schools and the home schools don't really have real science because we believed in the creation. But in one of the ones that we had was called Creation Science. It was really, really good. And we had nature studies. If I can find those while I'm going through my archives, I will certainly read to you out of nature studies. And it was, you know, the act of going for a walk with a child and showing them a bee, you know, flower, and learning to take pictures and sketch them and study about them, and just learning about life around you. You know, most children that graduate from a high school don't even know how plumbing or electricity works, or what real chemistry is when it comes to the home, or to things that are poisonous to them, or things that are beneficial, and they don't know quite as much as they think they do. But we did have the other side, and this is one thing the public school books won't do. They won't say, well, this is what we believe science is, but over here, this is what some Christians believe. But in the homeschool books, like Science with a Christian Perspective, and Science and Nature Studies, and Creation Science, what they will do is they will give the creation model on one page, and then they'll, across from that, like it'll be right here, and then across from that they'll say, this is what the non-believer believes, and it's pretty accurate. And I showed it to someone who wasn't a Christian. They said, well, yeah, that's what we were taught. So you see, it's more fair. This is more fair, and we do give the other side. I don't believe you will get the other side at a public school. So this is the story of the moon. And you know, as a mother and a woman, and as someone grew up in a public school, I have to say, they made science so dry for someone like me. It would have taken me, they would have had to do something a little bit different to get my attention. And for one thing, in order to get my attention, you've got to have something to say that alerts me immediately and draws me in, because I'll just get up and walk away and go do something that I need to do, because I won't spend much time listening to a tedious recitation of something. I will only, I think my thinking is too fast, and my time is so valuable, I'll just get up and go do something else. So they made it so dry. I called it high and dry. They made math so dry, they made science so dry, that none of us in these classes, very, very few, would have gone on to become scientists or become mathematicians. It was just non-interesting. And even some of the social planners and whatever you want to call them back in the 1800s, one of their plans was to make the Bible so dull, and church so dull, and school so dull, that no one would want to no one would want to be interested in it, and they could be more easily controlled. And this sounds a little preposterous, but that was what the book that I quoted to you a few weeks ago, that was called Seven Men Who Rule from the Grave, and it was Darwin and Karl Marx and Freud and all these people, and how their teachings still impact us today. So I hope you're busy doing something, folding something, and if this is not interesting to you, don't worry, we'll get into the getting along at home with people part, and it's more fun in just a little while. Okay, the purpose of the moon. Have you ever, this is how they introduce it to the student. Now, this is one reason these children that are homeschooled will go to bed with these laying across their chest. And you'll go and have to remove the book because they've fallen asleep reading this like it was an adventure story or a novel. Have you ever wondered why God made you? Or why God made anything? God made you in all things for his own glory. 1 Chronicles 16:28, Romans 11:36, and 1 Corinthians 6:20. But how can something like the moon be glory to God? Read the following verses and see whether you can find 3 ways that the moon can declare the glory of God. Now you might want to look up the word glory because it isn't actually used in common life around. It's not part of our common language anymore. But look up the word glory so you can figure out why it's used. And God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs, and for seasons, and for days and years, and let them be lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth." And it was so. Genesis 1:14-15. Do you see that God made the moon and lights? Just want to get a little light on here. Do you see that God made the moon and lights in the firmament to be for signs, for seasons, and for lights in the heaven? You know, this reminds me, there was a book I had, and it was called The Gospel in the Stars. And it was real interesting because it said, what if all of our Bibles were confiscated from us and censored and burned or destroyed? And how would anyone know the creation story and the gospel? And it went through and showed how every month the sky is lit up with a different set of stars, because as the earth turns, it goes to a different house. It's called a house of stars, because and the ancients drew imaginary lines from star to star to make it look like a horse or a scorpion or a baby or a mother and child or a cross, you know, the Southern Cross. They draw these imaginary lines so that it would be easier to identify it that way. Now, that is not the same as horoscope. That is the study of the heavens and the stars. Is totally different. So don't jump. I once lent someone the book and they said, "Oh no, I can't. This is horoscope. I don't like it," you know, because they put the stars in shapes with lines so that you could see a formation of a figure or a house or something like that, or some other thing, or an animal. But he had, I'm trying to think who it was that wrote it. It might have been someone named James Kennedy. I'm not sure. It was called The Gospel in the Stars. And what he had done is shown how month by month a new house of stars comes in the sky. And we have done this with the children. We put a blanket outside in the middle of summer. Everybody lay down and look up at the stars and see if you can find, you know, the Great North Star, the Big Dipper, or the Little Dipper, or the Southern Cross. I don't think we see the Southern Cross in the Northern Hemisphere. I'm not sure, but I know in the Southern Hemisphere you'll have a slightly different set, and at different times. And the Gospel in the Stars, he would start out with the mother and the child, which they call, I forget what they call it, when they drew the lines and call it, I forget what it's called. And it was the mother and the child, and then it would go on and show different aspects of the story of Christ through these houses of stars month by month. And I thought that was quite clever. It was called The Gospel in the Stars, and you might be able to look that up and get the whole sermon but I probably shouldn't have deviated from that. Do you see, the reason it triggered me is because it said, do you see that God made the moon and all lights in the firmament to be for signs, for seasons, and for lights in the heaven? And if you'll read the book of Acts, you'll see how Paul, who was on a ship, talked about how the sailors became very afraid because it was getting close to winter, because they could tell by a certain constellation that was in a constellation is that set of stars, the housing of stars, and how they were frightened because, and they named the constellation, named by the ancient Greek or Egyptian name, and so it's very exciting to study the stars. It's not horoscope, and there's nothing wrong with it. But let me just talk a little bit about how these the lesson goes. Is you'll see a girl holding a globe and a boy holding a baseball, and it talks about, and every section has an experiment. Now, science experiments can be very fulfilling and wonderful in the home because it opens up your mind and their minds at the same time. And this is what you will need about how the moon works. You will need a plastic tack, a globe, and a softball. Put a piece of plastic tack on the globe to show the place where you live. Have a friend hold the softball about a foot from the globe to represent the moon. Have him move the ball slowly around the globe, as you turn it fast. Now these globes, they spin on a little wheel that they're mounted on. So turn both counterclockwise. This activity will give you an idea of how the Earth turns in comparison to the moon. Now tell your friend to hold the moon steady, that's the softball, while you slowly turn the Earth. Put the moon to the east of your country. Turn the globe halfway around. Where is the moon in relation to your country now? Is it in the west or the east? The rotation of the Earth causes the moon to move across the sky. It doesn't actually move. Apparently the Earth is what moves. But we talk about the sun setting, but it doesn't actually set, that the Earth moves. Now, there will probably be people jump on here and disagree with me that have found a different theory, but this is the way I was taught, and I don't see any harm in it, and the Bible seems to bear it out. The moon is a calendar. Here's the picture. In the ancient Near East, the moon was an important time measure. The people used each appearance of the new moon to start a month. A merchant, for example, would take out his account book to find out how much people owed him. The Latin word for your account book is calens, from which we get the word calendar. But later, people found it easier to divide the year into 12 parts. And that's where you get the 12 houses of the constellations, the 12 sections of stars. Each part had about the same number of days. So today the word month applies to the 12 sections of the year and has no connections with the appearance of the new moon. The moon will be a warning, it says. And there have been, this explains some of the black days that have been, we talked about previously, where in the United States there was a black day in the 1800s or late 1700s, and people were convened in Congress, and some of the congressmen wanted to go home because they thought it was the end of the world, but it was probably just an eclipse. And so someone got up and made a speech and said, you know, if it is the end of the world, the Lord wants us to be doing our work when he comes. So they stayed. So anyway, this is called Science 4 for Christian schools, and I will try to find some other ones around here to read out of later. So now I want to go on to refinement in the home. And the reason this is important is because of the arguments that it can cause when people are unrefined. Now, unrefined means being too blunt, we talked about refinement and how when you refine something, you take away the stuff that is dirty and rough, and you take it off. When you refine a piece of wood, maybe you're a whittler or something, and you whittle something, and then you take some sandpaper and you sand it down, and you smooth off the rough edges. So that's what we're doing, is smoothing off the rough edges of ours in our children's personality. And remember, the Bible says, take the log out of your own eye first before attempting to take the splinter out of your brother's. So mothers and women at home and the ones that are listening to, let's take care of our own personalities first and then attempt to teach our children. Now, refinement means that I want to talk about this because when you are refined, you're not going to jump down someone's throat over something. And children can learn this, you know. Naturally, they're going to communicate with each other and play with each other and be rather blunt. But eventually, if this creates quarreling and discomfort and unpleasantness, this will have to be gently corrected. Now, you can make rules and say from now on you're not going to do this and this, but isn't it better to persuade the heart and to have the heart change than to just live by rules? Because if you ladies just live by rules, then you don't have a heartfelt conviction about it. We've talked about the difference between a conviction and a preference, but just living by rules and making up new rules doesn't change anything. You know, sometimes we mothers, we get the idea we're going to make a list, and we'll put the list up on the wall and say, no screaming, no hitting, no spitting, no whatever, and no throwing blocks. And after a while, you wonder why doesn't the list? And of course, you might have, you know, the consequences and stuff. But the thing is, if you got them together instead and talked about love and how we are commanded to love one another, and the Bible calls Christians brothers and sisters, well, even more so in the home, we're brothers and sisters, and we're commanded to love our brother. And you can find scriptures that say, he who does not love his brother who he has seen cannot love God who he has not seen. So this is really important. So I wanted to start out with ladies, maybe ladies at home or ladies in church or ladies with other women, and you can translate this to your own family if you want to. And that is, when we're talking about refinement, remember, we're taking off the rough edges. We're taking off the things that make our personalities abrasive. And that's why we're being more careful about being blunt. And it's funny and fun to be blunt in some instances. And but for now, I'm going to say that first of all, you're in a group, maybe your own family, and someone says something, and you abruptly contradict. Now, maybe you're right, but abrupt contradiction doesn't win any hearts. And so I would say, don't contradict in a group. That's an abrasive trait. If you contradict in a group, now we can all say that sometimes it will be necessary when there's danger, spiritual danger going on to your children. Maybe you get someone over for dinner and they will be sitting at the dinner table blabbing away about something that's not true. It might be appropriate to say something, but you also need to, don't just correct somebody, but educate them. So instead of saying, well, that's not true, always have the alternative ready to tell them. Don't correct anybody or stop anybody unless you know what they need to know, and do that. But first of all, an abrasive trait is to contradict in a group. Ladies might be sitting around talking, and someone says something, and you say, and someone contradicts right away, just contradicts. Let me just show you an example, okay? Let's say you're at home and you're talking about something you want redone on the wall. Maybe you want to have something replaced or redone, make it more convenient for everyone and make the house work better. Maybe you just want something to be improved. And so someone in the group, in the home here, says, well, I like it like that. Well, we'll just, you know, it wouldn't work for me, or something like that. That is contradicting in a group. And what that does is it waters down what the person was trying to say, and it reduces the importance of that person and their words in the eyes of other people. So what you have to do is, if you really strongly object to something, what you want to do is wait until you can get the person aside by themselves, not embarrass them in front of other people, and it will help your personality not sound so abrasive. And even the Bible says, I believe it is Matthew 18, and it applies to the church, but let's apply it to the home a little bit, is that, first of all, we're not supposed to be abruptly correcting the elders. And second of all, if someone has done something offensive, we need to go to them first. So, or if someone has offended you, you need to go to them first. So go, take them aside. Take them aside and talk to them privately about it. But don't explode in front of a group about something and contradict in a group. And contradiction is generally quite abrasive anyway, and some people will argue back, and that's probably what starts the most arguments, is contradiction. If you contradict everything, it doesn't mean that you're going to get sucked into falsehood if you don't say anything. You say to yourself, well, that's a false statement, but I am going to have to think about how I'm going to approach it, and then I'll take them aside quietly and talk to them. And even then, you have to be careful, because you could destroy families, destroy friendships, destroy many different things by even taking them aside, because some things you can overlook. You can just let it go, and some people will have to find out for themselves if they don't respond well to any kind of alternative information. So, but the contradiction is usually the start of every argument. And quarreling, that's how a quarrel starts. You don't just say something and it becomes a quarrel. It becomes a quarrel after a few contradictory statements back and forth. That's a quarrel. So quarreling is rebellion, and it is the first thing to, it's the first step. The contradiction is the first step. Not saying contradiction is wrong, but it is wrong in some respects when it causes strife, when it causes someone to be upset. And first of all, there are some things words that you need to understand. And that's why I suggested last time that you go to some of the old Carol Burnett shows, like Mama's Birthday and the game they were playing called Sorry. And there was one other one that it's kind of slipped my mind what it was. There were 3 that I mentioned in my last video. To go, and if you can get it on YouTube and then stop it at certain points and start writing down some things that are going on here that's causing one of the characters to have a total crazy meltdown. Let's say she starts out not crazy, just happy or something, and people start to dig at her and pick on her until in the end, and they'll call her crazy, until in the end she acts crazy because they have just driven her to it. And but this is not funny in the home, and this is not funny if you're trying to live in a Christian way and you want to be refined and take off the rough edges of your personality. Now, if you're young, you start out arguing. Let's say in your home you grew up arguing. That might not matter so much when you're young, but becomes even more disgusting when you're elderly. It's just, and as we grow older, ladies, we're going to have to try harder to be more feminine, because there's a lot of things, you lose your youthfulness, and you lose your looks and everything, and so you're going to have a soft heart and a soft speech and happiness, and not continue to aggravate, because it's very hard to get rid of once you're older. So whatever you're forming in your youth is going to be what you're going to be when you're elderly, and it'll be more exaggerated. Especially the bad stuff. For some reason, the bad traits are more exaggerated. The good traits, not so much. Isn't that sad? So here are some words you might want to look up so you can explain them to your children if they're old enough to understand what you're trying to do about arguing and fighting. Okay. Insinuation. Watch some of those Carol Burnett shows and see how they insinuate. It's a suggestion that someone might have done something. It's a suggestion that someone might be a little this or a little off. Or it's insinuation. When you insinuate, remember that movie Gigi, where her Aunt Alicia was training her to be more graceful and to walk more gracefully, and Gigi was awkward and everything, and she'd come into the room when it was time for one of her lessons, and she would just plop on the chair, And her aunt would correct her and say, Gigi, don't sit down like that. When you sit down, insinuate. And it was just a slow movement. Well, insinuation is this sneaky, slow way of suggesting, just a slight suggestion that someone is stupid, dumb, has done something wrong. And of course, you could insinuate maybe the other way too, but very rarely is it used for good. And so look up insinuation and look at one of those Carol Burnett shows that I suggested and see how the insinuation eventually causes people to be triggered until the whole family is squabbling and screaming, and they have it down to science, so might want to watch that just to figure it out. The other one is instigation. You might want to look up that. What's an instigation? When you instigate something, is it something that you're setting up? You're setting up somebody, you're instigating, you're starting something. And children are very good at it if they're not corrected. But just correcting them is not going to help, because you're going to have to touch the heart. You're going to have to say, now, is instigating and insinuating, are these things that they will blacken your soul? See, it would have touched me more to say it blackened your soul. It jeopardized your relationship with God, and it offended God, than to tell me that insinuation was wrong. Probably would have affected me more to say that I was going to jeopardize my relationship with God. And the stereotyping, that's another one, where you label somebody and you say, well, you're just not, you're not artistic, you're not good with money, you're irresponsible, you are not much good for anything. And these are stereotypings where you don't, it's really a dangerous thing to do, because even when you're older like me, you want to be given a chance to grow. We're always growing. We always want to improve, but you don't want to label somebody, because it can get in them and they'll start believing it, and it'll stunt their spiritual growth. You don't want to do that. Don't be responsible. Like when we were growing up, we were never allowed to call anyone crazy, insane, or anything like that, because it could wound them so badly in more ways than just hurting their feelings. Sometimes they would feel that they were so insane that they would take it so seriously and never be able to grow from there, never be able to feel like they were normal. So insinuation, stereotyping, instigation, and here's another one, entrapment. Entrapment, I have seen this in real life, and you'll see this on the Carol Burnett comedies that I mentioned, where someone will say something that they know aggravates the other person, and so then the other person just starts to argue back or fly into some kind of a rage, and then when they fly into a rage, they bring up things from like 40 years ago, and then make this long list and go on and on and on. And entrapment is also where you ask someone, did you do such and such this morning? And you say, yeah. Well, and then they say, well, you shouldn't have done that. You see, they're entrapping you. Anytime people that ask questions are often, I call them fishing, but they fish, for information. They'll ask you, did you go out today? And you'll say, oh yeah, I went out and I went to the grocery store. Well, you weren't supposed to. And so be careful about people that entrap in conversations. And also, to prevent it, don't give so much information. Don't, someone says, what are you doing? Just say, oh, a bit of this and a bit of that, the normal thing. Work all day, sleep all night. And if you don't trust them, if they're not, that's another thing people do, and I've forgotten what it's called. It has a name, where they will befriend you and maybe even live with you for years at home. Maybe you're someone in your family, and you trust them, and so you reveal some little heart's desire or something that some little fear or something, and you'll think, or maybe you'll say, I don't want to go such and such a place because there's something about that bothers me, and they seem to intellectually assent to that, and then years later, maybe months later, maybe weeks later, bring it up again and poke it at you, poke friends, throw it in your face is what it's called. Be careful what you say to people, even in your home, because they can't, if you can't entirely trust them, they'll throw it in your face and try to make you feel bad and look bad. And the other thing is gaslighting. Now, I didn't know what gaslighting was, but it has gone on since the beginning of time. Gaslighting has gone on. It's just lying. And gaslighting, the term comes from this old movie called Gaslight with Charles Boyer and Ingrid Bergman. And I would not suggest you watch that if you have children. It's not for children. It's for mature people. And it was I guess from I'm trying to think what year that was, 1956 that it was made. I'm not sure, but there was one later that was made that wasn't as good. So, and what it was this man who was very anxious to marry this woman, who was very beautiful, very confident, had some money, and had inherited a house that belonged to her aunt who had died tragically. And there's apparently some kind of valuables. There are some kind of valuables up in the attic somewhere or something. Anyway, he married this woman, and in order to get her out of the way of his goal to find these treasures and steal them, constantly began to berate her by telling her that her mind was half gone and that she was forgetting things, and that people were saying that she just didn't look well, and that she was careless, and that she was, and so she was quite introspective, as most of us are. We want to improve. We don't want to offend anybody. So she'd apologize, and she'd just berate herself, and she would just be beside herself. And his constant lying to her about her personality made her so sick that she ended up in bed just frightened of everything. And so this is called gaslighting, where you can program a person by this constant demeaning of their personality just to break them down. And I think that it goes on a lot. It has from the beginning of time. You can see it, you read through the Bible, you start to notice some of these things. Of course, most of us, when we read the Bible for the first time, we kind of overlooked a lot of the bad stuff because we were looking for the good things. Why would you want to dwell on anything that was unpleasant? But these are the kind of things, if you watch these shows on your own, and only with the children if they're you feel like it's age appropriate, because these people just get mad, and it disintegrates, and it doesn't make sense to most people. But if you will analyze at what point did the first person get angry and what was said to them before, because a lot of people will focus on the person that got angry, and they will say, well, she shouldn't have blown her top, but they don't go back and see what it was that caused it and who caused it. Those people always go without blame, don't they? So I think that's really interesting. And when the Bible talks about getting along with one another, we're supposed to build one another up, and we're supposed to edify them. So if you ask the children, well, now how did that build them up and make them, we want them to succeed. We want each other to succeed. We want our brothers and sisters to succeed. How are you helping them succeed in life? Because one day they will be people that you will visit with on Thanksgiving and other times too, and that will be maybe a large part of your social life. Is it any wonder that children grow up to want to live far away from one another because the atmosphere at home was so unpleasant for them, as one child was aggravating or picking on another, and then in response the child that was targeted was screaming, and so of course neither one of them want to be with each other in the adult life. This is so important. We see situations with brothers, for instance, Cain and Abel. It's a very serious thing. God asked Cain. Cain was jealous of Abel's sacrifice because God was more pleased with it, and God asked Cain, "Why are you wroth? Why is your countenance down? Will not your countenance be lifted up if you do well?" And so this is the thing. You need to take that little section, analyze it, put it in a sentence, have them write it out, and ask, what is a countenance, and how can your countenance be lifted up to do well? Is it well? Is it doing well to aggravate your brothers and sisters? Is it better to build them up spiritually? And there was another term for it in the New Testament about we're supposed to build one another up and encourage one another and not discourage one another, and talk about how discouraging that is, and they won't get on in life. You know, a lot of government problems and church problems and word problems are caused by uncorrected behavior in the home, I really believe. And I can see it in churches, and of course over the years I've had a varied experience with watching and observing church members. And if they hadn't learned as youth, because you know it's hard to change habits as you grow older, and if you don't have it embedded in you as a youth to learn how to get along with others, that and what causes them to be aggravated and what causes people to be upset, if you don't learn that um, in the home, then it causes trouble later on in life. It causes trouble in business. It causes trouble in church. It causes trouble in the civic matters, things like that. So, ladies, I wanted to leave you with a happy note, and I didn't do it, but I would say if you'll go and have a good laugh and watch a couple of those episodes. Now, just be discerning about it because they aren't Christian. They aren't. Oh, the other episode that I thought was interesting was called the Preacher, and it was where Ed came home from church, and he was so happy because he thought that preacher was so good, and then it all started to disintegrate because they were doing the very thing the preacher was talking about. They were just berating one another. So, ladies, I hope you've got something done, and I hope you will go back to some of my previous talks if you need more time. So, ladies, I'll see you next time. Goodbye.